The massive doors of the Galactic Academy's most famous combat center slid open with a soft hiss. Students from dozens of different worlds had gathered in the main hall, their conversations creating a buzz of excitement that echoed off the metallic walls. Today was special. Today, they would meet their first human. Lucy Mitchell stepped through the doorway, her worn sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor. At 20 years old, she looked incredibly small next to the towering aliens around her. Some of the students were 8 feet tall, with thick, armor-like skin. Others had multiple arms or glowing eyes that could see in complete darkness. Lucy just looked like an ordinary girl from Earth, wearing simple clothes and carrying a small backpack. The alien students whispered among themselves as she walked past. They had heard stories about humans and their violent home planet. Earth was classified as a death world by the Galactic Council. It was a place where the weather could kill you, the animals hunted in packs, and even the plants were dangerous. But looking at Lucy, none of them could believe the stories were true. Near the back of the crowd stood Korvax, a warrior from the Stellar Empire. His body was made of living crystal that sparkled under the lights. For 3 years, he had never lost a single fight at the academy. Other students respected him, and instructors praised his perfect technique. He was everything a galactic warrior should be: strong, disciplined, and deadly. Korvax watched Lucy with growing amusement. She was so tiny compared to him. Her arms looked weak, and her movements seemed clumsy. How could someone like this come from the same planet that produced the legendary human soldiers he had heard about in whispered conversations? Commander Thane, the head combat instructor, called for attention. His voice boomed across the hall, instantly silencing the crowd. He was an old veteran who had seen battles across the galaxy, and his scarred face told stories of countless fights. "Students," he announced, "as part of our cultural exchange program, we will demonstrate the traditional welcoming ceremony. You will represent our academy in a friendly sparring match with our human guest." The crowd murmured with excitement. Everyone knew how these ceremonies went. The academy's champion would quickly defeat the newcomer, establishing the natural order of things. It was not meant to be cruel. Just a simple way of showing where everyone stood. Korvax stepped forward, his crystal body catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. He felt confident, almost bored. In his culture, strength was everything. The strong lead and the weak followed. It was a simple system that had worked for thousands of years. Lucy looked around the crowd of expectant faces. She had read about these ceremonies in the Academy Handbook during her long journey from Earth. She understood what was happening, even if she did not particularly like it. Commander Thane activated the combat arena systems. Invisible force. Fields hummed to life, creating a safe space for the match. Medical scanners began recording vital signs, ready to stop the fight if anyone got seriously hurt. Security cameras positioned around the room started recording everything. "This should be quick," Commander Thane muttered to his assistant, checking the timer on his wrist device. 30 seconds at most. Humans are new to galactic combat. She probably has never even seen energy weapons before. The other instructors nodded in agreement. They had trained hundreds of students from dozens of worlds. They knew how these introduction matches went. The newcomer would try their best, learn something about galactic fighting styles, and everyone would shake hands afterward. What none of them realized was that Lucy had grown up on a planet where survival was never guaranteed. She had learned to fight not in comfortable training rooms, but in the real world, where making a mistake meant death. Earth had taught her lessons that no academy could provide. The arena floor cleared as students moved to the observation areas. Bright lights illuminated the fighting space, and the force field barriers shimmered like heat waves. Everything was ready for what everyone assumed would be a very short and educational demonstration. Korvax stretched his crystal limbs, each movement smooth and practiced. He had performed this welcoming ceremony many times before, with students from different worlds. Some had been quick, others strong, but none had ever surprised him. Today would be no different. Lucy quietly removed her jacket and rolled up her sleeves. Korvax walked into the center of the arena like he owned the place. His crystal body caught the overhead lights, sending sparkles dancing across the walls. The bioarmor that covered his chest and arms hummed softly with energy, ready to absorb any impact. His plasma weapon, a sleek device that could cut through solid metal, powered up with a low whining sound that made the air vibrate. The alien students in the observation area leaned forward in their seats. Many of them pulled out recording devices, expecting to capture another routine victory for their champion. Some placed small bets on how long the human would last. The popular guess was 15 seconds, maybe 20 if she was lucky. Lucy stood on the opposite side of the arena, wearing nothing special. Her clothes were the same ones she had traveled in from Earth. A simple gray shirt, dark pants, and those squeaky sneakers. No armor, no weapons, no glowing technology. She looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong place by accident. "Look at her," whispered a student with 4 arms and green skin. "She does not even have basic protection gear. How did she pass the academy entrance tests?" Another student, this one covered in scales, shook his large head. "Deathworld or not, she is clearly not a warrior. Maybe humans are just good at building machines, not fighting." Commander Thane stood at the edge of the arena, his finger hovering over the emergency stop button. He had seen many mismatched fights before, and he knew when to step in. The medical scanners showed Lucy's heart rate was perfectly normal, which seemed wrong. Most students were nervous during their first academy fight. Korvax raised his plasma weapon in the traditional fighting stance of his people. His left arm extended forward for balance, his right arm pulled back, with the weapon ready to strike. It was a pose that had been perfected over centuries of warfare, designed to give maximum power and control. The crowd grew quiet, waiting for the signal to begin. "Start," announced Commander Thane. For a split second, nothing happened. Korvax began to move his weapon forward in the standard opening attack. A controlled strike meant to disarm and disable without causing serious injury. It was a move he had practiced thousands of times then. Lucy moved. She did not use any fancy techniques or alien fighting styles. There were no energy blasts or technological tricks. She simply stepped forward and hit Korvax's weapon hand with the side of her palm. The plasma weapon went flying across the arena, skittering along the floor until it hit the far wall. The sound of the weapon clattering away was the only noise in the suddenly silent arena. Korvax stared at his empty hand in confusion. His crystal fingers were still curved around where his weapon had been, but now they held only air. He had not even seen Lucy move. One moment his weapon was there, the next it was gone. "What just happened?" someone whispered from the crowd. Lucy did not pause to let him recover. Her second move was just as simple and just as devastating. She grabbed Korvax's extended arm, stepped to his side, and used his own momentum against him. The crystal warrior, who had never lost his balance in 3 years of training, suddenly found himself stumbling forward. But Lucy was not done. As Korvax tried to regain his footing, she swept his legs, not with some complex martial arts technique, but with a basic move that any human child might use in a playground fight. Korvax, all 7 feet and 300 pounds of him, crashed to the arena floor with a sound like breaking glass. The entire sequence took less than 4 seconds. The arena was completely silent. Even the humming of the force field barriers seemed louder than before. Students stared with their mouths open, their recording devices still running but capturing something none of them had expected to see. Korvax lay on his back, staring up at the ceiling lights. His bioarmor was undamaged, his crystal body was unbroken, but his pride was shattered. He had trained for years to become the Academy's champion. He had studied the fighting styles of dozens of worlds. He had never been defeated so quickly, or so completely. Lucy stood over him, not even breathing hard. She looked down at the fallen warrior with an expression that was almost apologetic. "Sorry about that," she said quietly. "Are you okay?" Korvax struggled to get back on his feet, his crystal body scraping against the arena floor. His mind raced as he tried to understand what had just happened. No one had ever disarmed him that easily. It had to be luck, a simple mistake on his part. There was no way this small human could actually be a threat to someone like him. "Get up, Korvax," shouted one of his friends from the crowd. "Show her what real fighting looks like." The crystal warrior rolled to his side and pushed himself upright. His bioarmor automatically ran diagnostics, checking for damage. Everything was working perfectly. His backup weapon, a smaller energy blade built into his left gauntlet, activated with a soft blue glow. This time he would be ready for whatever trick the human had used. Lucy took a step back, giving him room to stand. She did not look proud or excited about knocking him down. If anything, she seemed uncomfortable with all the attention from the watching crowd. Her hands hung loosely at her sides, and she shifted her weight from foot to foot like someone waiting for a bus. "Begin again," called Commander Thane. He was frowning now, studying the readings from his scanners. Something was wrong with the data, but he could not figure out what. Korvax moved more carefully this time. He had trained for situations like this, where his primary weapon was lost. The backup blade extended from his gauntlet, crackling with energy that could cut through most materials. He adopted a defensive stance, keeping his weapon close to his body and watching Lucy's every movement. Lucy did not seem to care about his new weapon at all. She walked toward him like she was approaching a friend for conversation, not a trained warrior holding a deadly energy blade. There was no fear in her eyes, no respect for the danger she was walking into. It was as if the weapon did not exist. Korvax swung the blade in a wide arc, trying to keep her at a safe distance. The energy weapon hummed through the air, leaving a brief trail of light. It was a perfect technique, executed exactly as his instructors had taught him. Lucy simply was not there when the blade arrived. She had ducked under his swing and stepped inside his guard before he could react. Her hand closed around his wrist, and suddenly his arm would not move the way he wanted it to. She had found some pressure point that made his fingers go numb, and the energy blade flickered and died. "How is she doing that?" gasped a student in the crowd. "She's not even using any combat techniques I recognize." Lucy twisted Korvax's arm behind his back. Not roughly, but with a control that was somehow more frightening than violence would have been. The crystal warrior found himself bent forward, completely helpless, held in place by someone who weighed half as much as he did. He tried to use his free arm to break her hold, but Lucy seemed to know what he was going to do before he did. Every move he attempted was blocked or redirected. When he tried to spin around to face her, she simply moved with him, staying behind him like his own shadow. The crowd watched in growing amazement as their champion was methodically taken apart. This was not the quick, brutal victory they had expected. Instead, it was something much more unsettling. Lucy was not trying to hurt Korvax. She was teaching him, move by move, that everything he thought he knew about fighting was wrong. "She's reading him," whispered Commander Thane to his assistant. "Look at the scanner readings. She's predicting his movements before he makes them." Korvax tried desperately to remember his training. He had learned dozens of escape techniques, methods for breaking free from any hold, but nothing worked. Every time he shifted his weight or changed position, Lucy adjusted her grip. It was as if she could see inside his mind. For the first time in his life, the champion of the academy felt truly helpless. He was stronger than Lucy. His armor was better. His weapons were more advanced, but none of it mattered. She moved around his defenses, like water flowing around rocks. "I give up," he said quietly. The words surprised him. He had never given up before, never surrendered in any fight. But something deep in his warrior instincts was screaming at him that continuing this match would be dangerous. Not because Lucy might hurt him, but because she might break something inside him that could never be fixed. Lucy immediately released him and stepped back. "Are you sure?" she asked. "We can stop if you want." Commander Thane stared at his scanner display, blinking several times to make sure he was reading it correctly. The numbers made no sense. According to every instrument in the arena, Lucy's body had barely reacted to the fight at all. Her heart rate was only slightly higher than when she had been standing still. Her breathing was calm and steady. The stress hormones that flooded most fighters during combat were almost completely absent from her system. "Run the scan again," he told his assistant, a thin alien with large eyes and delicate fingers. "I already ran it 3 times, sir," the assistant replied, his voice shaking slightly. "The readings are consistent." The human showed no signs of physical or mental strain during the entire match. In the arena, Lucy was helping Korvax to his feet. The Crystal Warrior moved slowly, like someone who had just woken up from a confusing dream. His friends in the crowd called out words of encouragement, but their voices sounded uncertain and worried. "What does this mean?" asked Dr. Vex, the Academy's chief medical officer. She was a brilliant scientist who had studied the biology of hundreds of different species. If she was not stressed, not pushing herself, then ... Then she was holding back. Commander Thane finished quietly. The entire time, the implications hit him like a physical blow. He had watched thousands of fights in his career, trained warriors from across the galaxy. He knew what maximum effort looked like, and he knew what restraint looked like. Lucy had not just been holding back a little. She had been operating at maybe 10% of her actual capability. Word of the strange match began spreading through the Academy's communication systems. Instructors in other buildings stopped their lessons to watch recorded footage of the fight. Senior staff members left their offices and gathered in the combat center's observation rooms. Within an hour, the Academy's leadership was holding an emergency meeting in the main conference room. The holographic table displayed Lucy's bio readings, alongside detailed analysis of every move she had made during the match. "Look at this," said General Korath, pointing to a specific moment in the recording. "Right here, when she first approached Korvax. The computer analysis shows 17 different attack angles she could have used. 17 ways she could have ended the fight in the first second." The room fell silent as the other leaders studied the data. Each potential attack was highlighted in red, showing strike points that would have disabled or seriously injured the Crystal Warrior. Lucy had walked past every single opportunity, choosing instead to simply disarm him. "She was playing with him," whispered Admiral Zane, like a parent wrestling with a small child. Dr. Vex pulled up additional scans from the Academy's medical database. "I've been comparing her readings to other species we've tested. Her muscle density is 3 times higher than average for her size. Her reaction time is faster than our best pilots. Her bone structure shows signs of adaptation to extremely high gravity." "High gravity?" asked Commander Thane. "Earth's gravity is nearly twice what most civilized worlds consider normal," Dr. Vex explained. "Humans have been living and fighting in conditions that would crush most of us. Their entire bodies are designed for a level of physical stress that we use as torture." The pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Earth was classified as a death world, not because it was uninhabitable, but because it was so dangerous that only the strongest creatures could survive there. And humans were not just survivors. They were the apex predators of that impossible planet. "We need to review our entire understanding of human capabilities," said General Korath. "If this one student can defeat our best warrior without effort, what does that say about human military forces?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Every leader in the room began thinking about the political implications. Humanity had been welcomed into the galactic community as a peaceful species, eager to learn from more advanced civilizations. But what if they had gotten it backwards? What if humans were not peaceful because they were weak, but because they were so incredibly dangerous that they had chosen restraint as their default setting? Back in the arena, Lucy was talking quietly with Corvax, making sure he was not injured. She had no idea that her simple demonstration had just changed how the entire galaxy would view her species. To her, the fight had been nothing special, just another Tuesday back home on Earth. By the next morning, everyone at the Galactic Academy knew Lucy's name. Students who had never spoken to a human before were pointing and whispering when she walked through the hallways. Some moved out of her way entirely, pressing themselves against the walls, as if she might suddenly attack them. Others stared with the kind of fascination usually reserved for dangerous wild animals in a zoo. Lucy found the attention uncomfortable and confusing. She had grown up on a farm in rural England, where the most exciting thing that happened was when the neighbor's cow got loose. The idea that she was somehow frightening to beings who could travel between stars seemed ridiculous to her. In the combat training center, instructors were completely reorganizing their lesson plans. Master Chen, who had been teaching defensive techniques for 20 years, watched Lucy's fight footage for the 15th time and shook his head in amazement. "Look at this movement here," he explained to his colleague. "She shifts her weight by maybe 2 inches, and suddenly she's in the perfect position to counter any attack he might make. It's not luck or instinct. It's pure calculation, but happening faster than our best computers could manage." The Academy's computer systems were working overtime, analyzing every second of the match. Military strategists from across the galaxy requested copies of the footage. Some governments quietly began reviewing their defensive policies, wondering what would happen if humans ever decided to stop being so friendly. Corvax spent the first day after the match sitting alone in his room, staring at the wall. His crystal body had healed perfectly from the few minor scratches he had received, but something inside him felt fundamentally changed. Everything he had believed about strength and combat had been turned upside down in less than 5 minutes. On the second day, he worked up the courage to approach Lucy during lunch. She was sitting by herself in the cafeteria, picking at a plate of food that looked nothing like anything from Earth. Most of the other students had given her a wide berth, leaving empty tables around her like she had some kind of invisible force field. "May I sit here?" Corvax asked, his voice much quieter than it had been before their match. Lucy looked up and smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile that made her look like any normal 20-year-old student. "Of course, I was getting tired of eating alone." They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Corvax found the words he was looking for. "I have been thinking about our fight," he said carefully. "I realized something that frightens me." "What's that?" Lucy asked, taking a sip from her drink and immediately making a face. "And how do you guys make coffee taste like engine oil?" Corvax almost smiled at her complaint. "You are not fighting me," he said. "You were managing me, like I was a child having a tantrum, and you were a parent, making sure I did not hurt myself." Lucy set down her cup and looked at him seriously. "I wasn't trying to make you feel bad, if that's what you're worried about. Back home, we learn early that fights should end as quickly as possible, with as little damage as possible. Dragging things out just gives someone a chance to get seriously hurt." "Back home," Corvax repeated. "What is it like growing up on Earth?" Lucy thought for a moment, remembering her childhood. "Normal, I guess. You learn to watch for dangerous weather, avoid the wildlife that might eat you, and be careful around other people, because humans can be unpredictable when they're scared or angry. Basic survival stuff." To Corvax, none of that sounded basic at all. On his homeworld, the weather was controlled by machines. The most dangerous animal was about the size of a house cat, and violence between citizens had been eliminated centuries ago through genetic modification and social conditioning. Within a week, Lucy and Corvax had become unlikely friends. He helped her navigate the Academy's complex social structure, while she shared stories about Earth that amazed and terrified him in equal measure. She told him about storms that could level entire cities, about animals that hunted in coordinated packs, about human history filled with wars and conflicts that would have destroyed most civilizations. "The strangest part," she said one evening, as they walked through the academy gardens, "is that everyone here seems to think humans are naturally violent, but we're not. We're just really, really good at it when we need to be." The Academy's new combat curriculum reflected this understanding. Instead of teaching students to overpower their opponents, instructors began focusing on control, restraint, and they realized that true strength was not about causing maximum damage, but about having the power to cause damage and choosing not to. Lucy, meanwhile, was struggling with her xenobiology homework and desperately searching for decent coffee in a galaxy that seemed to have never heard of proper brewing techniques.